Welcome to the second part of this video series, Quasar for Designers. I'm Kiersey Sutherland and I work for KDAB. In this series, we are building an application using Blender and Quasar to show a 3D cube that is controlled by the code. Previously, we had created a GLTF file that contained the 3D model that we wanted to use. Now we can begin to add this to the code. In this part, I will be showing you how to integrate our model into the code. I'm starting with a blank Qt Quick project with some boilerplate code that I've been given by the developers. To import the GLTF, all I need to do is to add the files to the asset resources. If I need to update, it's easy. All I need to do is replace the files. As you can see, the files have been added. Now I will add the floor image we created to the assets. I begin by setting up the width and the height to match the size of the GLTF export camera. I add in an item to hold the GLTF items, making sure it fills the window. I add the floor image, copying the URL from the asset file and filling the item. Finally, I add in a reference to the My3D Scene component. I call it My3D Scene and make sure it fills the parent. I fill the source with the URL of the GLTF file. I add in a list of two triggers, the cube and the reflection. These refer to the cube and the reflection objects we created in Blender. Later, we will use them to rotate both the meshes. This is all that is required to show the GLTF in the app. It is very simple. I'll run it. There, you can see the GLTF file with the floor showing in the background. As you can see, what you can see in the final app is what you see in Blender in Eevee, so it's very intuitive to work with. Now that we have the 3D model showing, let's add in the functionality. I've added in some sliders to the window. We can see the three sliders on the screen, but they don't do anything. Let's add in this functionality. The boilerplate code that I was given needs to be tweaked so we can change the color of the materials on the cube and the reflection. In the 3D Scene component, we can see there is a camera asset. We can use this format to gain access to the materials. I create an asset called MatCube, which uses the materials collection. The material name we assigned to the cube in Blender was called Iro, so we can reference it here. I copy this code for the reflection, making sure I change the ID to Matte Reflection and the material we are referencing to Iro Reflection. Next, we make sure that the My3D Scene item can access these materials by creating an alias for each material, and material reflection. All an alias does is to connect a name to an object so we can use it elsewhere. Finally, I need to be able to access these materials in our code. So I'll create another two aliases, cube material and another reflection material. Now we are able to link the materials to the sliders. First, we create three aliases, one for each slider value. These will be used to update the color of the two materials. I want to update the materials each time a slider is moved, so I'll create a function so it's easy to do this. I'll call it updateCubeColor. We use a reference to My3D Scene so we can access the cube material. We want to update the node that has the diffuse inner filter, so we type it like this. This is just a Qt 3D vector, which is just three values. So we can pass in the red, green and blue values of the sliders that we've just set up. I can now duplicate this code to do the exact same thing for the reflection. All I need to do is change the material we are referencing. The last thing we need to do is make sure that the material gets updated when the slider value changes. We do this by calling the function anytime one of the 3 sliders is updated. Now that we have everything linked up, let's see this working. Moving the sliders changes the color of both the cube and the reflection. When we have all the sliders at maximum, the color is very intense. Let's reduce this a little. I'll add in here a property that controls the maximum fraction of the color that we will use and set it to 1/2. I now multiply each value we pass into the materials to reduce their intensity. We can now see that moving the sliders to maximum produces a less intense version of the color. Now let's start making the rotation work. I've set up 3 sliders here. Let's check that all 3 sliders look as expected. Great. Now let's link the sliders to the rotation. Again, I add 3 aliases to reference the rotational sliders. I then create a function that updates the cube's rotation passing in these 3 aliases. These use a slightly different format as we are interacting with the object directly using the triggers we created earlier, cube and reflection. I then copy the code for the reflection, making sure that the X and Z axis rotation is reversed as it is a reflection. Finally, I add in the link that updates the rotation when the sliders are changed. Let's check that this works. You can see the cube and the reflection rotate when the sliders are moved. Finally, I've added in a button and an animation that plays automatically when you start the application. You can see the rotational sliders are working along with the color sliders starting at different times. Pressing the button also stops and starts the animation. You can see when you click a slider, the animation stops. Thank you for watching this video. I will now pass to my colleague Nuno to complete the application and this video series.